Ted Kennedy, you've written about this extensively. And all the media coverage, I mean, he's a fairly contemporary figure, even though he passed some years ago. He's well known to many people listening to this program, young people listening to this program. He was involved in left-wing causes up the wazoo, blocking conservative causes. From a prominent family, the media loved him. They never bring him up with respect to the old Soviet Union and how he worked closely with the Kremlin to try and defeat Ronald Reagan. Just a few minutes on that, if you can, Paul.
Yeah, sure. And let me add one thing very quickly from Harvard's Cold War History Project. This is, they concluded that the Venona papers revealed that more than 350 Americans, including numerous high-level U.S. government officials and scientists working on the Manhattan Project, were spying for Soviet intelligence agencies in the late 1930s and 1940s. Now, that's under FDR. More than 350 Americans spying for Soviet agencies in the 30s and 40s. But yeah, Ted Kennedy, we have a May 14th, 1983 document. It's written by Viktor Chebrikov, the head of the KGB, to Yuri Andropov, the head of the Soviet Union. And the very top of it, it says, regarding Senator Kennedy's request to the General Secretary of the Communist Party, Yuri Andropov. And they go through there and they talk about a confidential contact made by a liaison, John Tunney, who had been a Democratic senator from California in the 1970s. He was an old law school roommate of Ted Kennedy. He was the conduit for this, and it was an offer by Kennedy to meet with Andropov. It even says in the document, he's willing to fly to Moscow to meet with him directly. He's willing to help Soviet political and military officials come to the United States. Kennedy's willing to help them, introduce them to American media figures. They even named Walter Cronkite and Barbara Walters in the memo. And all of this is set within the context of the dangerous Ronald Reagan, who, as it notes throughout the document, is up for re-election next year. And he's riding high. Reaganomics is working. The economy's soaring. But Kennedy's very troubled by Reagan as a threat to peace. Kennedy says, to the contrary, that Kennedy is very impressed, are the exact words used, with Yuri Andropov. And so this whole Kennedy overture and outreach is set within the context of Reagan's 1984 re-election.
And you hear none of this in the context of what they're accusing Trump of. Russia, 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 Russia. I can't find all the Russia, 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 Russia involving Trump. Can you?
No, and I mean, if you want a smoking gun document, a piece of hard evidence, I mean, what could be stronger than a literal KGB document written by the literal head of the KGB? This isn't somebody who's a staffer for the KGB. This is the head of the KGB, Viktor Chebrikov, writing to the head of the Soviet Union, Yuri Andropov. And that document was found by a London Times BBC reporter named Tim Sebastian. It was first reported in the London Times, February 1992. And just a little bit of it was reported. He didn't actually publish the document. I published the document in full in a book in 2006, and then again in another book called Dupes in 2010, where I published both the English and the Russian and
would that make Ted Kennedy a traitor?
Well, I don't know if it makes him a traitor, but it certainly makes him scheming and duplicitous and doing something pretty damn bad that somebody on the left you think would care about.
But John Brennan, the CIA director before the last two CIA directors who worked for Obama, think he'd call Kennedy a traitor? No, because John Brennan, as you point out and others, voted for Gus Hall, the head of the Communist Party United States of America, and he knew all about Gus Hall, didn't he?
Well, and Gus Hall, who was, head of Communist Party USA, his guys in Moscow at that time that John Brennan voted for him would have been Yuri Andropov at the KGB and Leonid Brezhnev as head of the Soviet Union. And you know, this Kennedy stuff, I note the dates on when I published it, because when I first published those documents in a 2006 book, Kennedy lived for, I'd have to look up, I think 2 or 3 years after that. And nobody, and prior to that, 14 years earlier, 1992, was the piece in the London Times. The London Times. I mean, it's a very respectable newspaper.
I've got 1 minute. Any major news outlet interview you about this?
None.
Any today, other than this show?
No, none whatsoever. I've never.
None. They haven't asked you about Ted Kennedy. They haven't asked you about Alger Hiss. They haven't asked you about the Roosevelt administration, have they?
No, because I think they're afraid of what I would say.
Mm-hmm.
So when
that is the facts.
Yeah, that's right. When they know that you have information like this, they ignore you. If I had my facts wrong, they'd probably attack me and nuke it. But
Professor, I'm on a hard break. As always, we love having you, and I very much appreciate your contribution. Keep it up. He's a good friend, Paul Kangor, Grove City. God bless you, my friend. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Can you imagine Al Sharpton discussing this, or Mika Brzezinski, or Joe Scarborough, or Don Lemon, or Katie Tur, or Jake Tapper? Can you imagine any of them discussing this? No. They're too stupid, that's number one. But number two, they don't give a damn. Because they're all ideological, political hacks. I'm sorry. But don't blame me.